So I'm going to do the share screen thing, in which case you're going to disappear to my, and all right, so let's see. So can you see the PowerPoint slide?
Yep, perfect.
Okay, great.
Too, I guess. Yeah, all over. So if we're looking around, it's because there's the bigger screen is to our right.
Okay, that's fine. I can't see you guys anyway. All I can see are my slides.
Okay.
So, and I'm assuming you can't see me. You just see the slides, right?
There's a little picture of you in the corner.
Okay. All right then. So I'm going to be talking about how to use the mind to heal the body, or the body-mind connection. And I'm going to be talking about it specifically from the perspective of energy medicine. So just a little bit about my background. My PhD is from Ohio State University, and I studied something called somatics. Somatics having to do with body-mind integration. And while I was in graduate school at OSU, I also got certified in energy kinesiology, which is a form of kinesiology muscle testing. And I also have spent a few decades studying the Eastern life sciences and Eastern cosmology. I developed a healing modality called inner clarity, and it's like an energy psychology, transpersonal psychology modality. And I also write. I've got a bunch of articles published, and I also have a book out. And I work at the Four Seasons Resort on Maui, offering my sessions through the spa, and I also teach meditation there. And I teach an online course called Energy Mastery. So that's a little bit about me. This is the cover of my book, Endless Energy, and a lot of what I'm going to share with you comes from the book. So if you're interested in learning more about it, you could check out the book. It's available online and at most bookstores. So what I want to do this evening is to explain how to use the mind to heal the body from the perspective of energy medicine. And I'm going to introduce Tiller's multidimensional model and the four energy bodies as kind of the model that we're going to work with. And I also want to answer your questions. So if questions come up, please write them down, and hopefully we'll have some time at the end for question and answer. So when I started out putting the slideshow together, I kept running into this question: what is the mind? What is the mind? How are we defining that? Is it your brain? Is it your thoughts? Is it your emotions? Is it consciousness? Is there such a thing as a global mind? And I'm going to try to address each of these as we go, because it's going to inform what we're talking about. So earlier I said I want to use the model of William Tiller, and this is a picture of Dr. Tiller. He is Professor Emeritus at Stanford University and spent most of his career in the Materials Science Department at Stanford. He was chair of the department for quite some time. And after he retired, he has dedicated most of his time and research to advancing his multidimensional model. And as chair of the Materials Science Department, Tiller has his feet firmly planted in the material world, in the physical plane. But he also happens to be a theosophist, and he has really dedicated himself to substantiating and legitimizing a model of us humans that is very much in alignment with those teachings. So Tiller's model has been used quite a bit in Western science. He's published a lot of papers, and he has several books out. And his model is used very frequently by researchers in energy medicine. And it's also has its correlates in Eastern science. And, you know, here in the West, we tend to think that we've got the corner on science because, you know, we invented the scientific method. But the thing is, we in the West have spent a couple hundred years with our scientific method studying pretty much exclusively the physical world, the material plane, external reality. Whereas in the East, they have spent several thousand years studying the internal world, studying the subjective realms, studying the unseen forces. And we have to recognize that what is science? Science is basically the systematic study of a phenomena. And in the East, they have very systematically studied the inner world, the unseen world, and it is, in fact, a science. So this is a picture of Tiller's multi-dimensional model, and what I want you to notice about it is that there's basically three main components. So one of those is the physical body that's depicted there, looking like a little physical body. And then directly behind that, there's something called the conjugate physical. And the physical and conjugate physical comprise one component of this model. And then we have the second component, which is the emotional, and then the mental, and then the spiritual. So there's basically four main components to Tiller's multi-dimensional model. And in the next picture here, this is very similar to Tiller's model, except that I like circles better than squares. And also, I use slightly different language. So in this model, we have the physical body, and we have the vital body, which is the term I use for the conjugate physical, because conjugate physical is just too much of a mouthful. And, you know, I work with clients, and when you work with clients, it's helpful to use language that they can easily relate to and understand. And if you talk about the vital body, most people can understand what that means because it's responsible for our vitality. So we have the physical vital body as one component of this model. Then we have the emotional body, and then the mental and the universal body. So it's basically the same as Tiller's model, except vital instead of conjugate physical, and also the universal body. In Tiller's model, he refers to it as the spiritual dimension or the spiritual plane. And I try to avoid words like spiritual because people tend to confuse spirituality with religion, and these energies have nothing to do with religion. It's not like you believe in them or you don't. They just exist. I mean, they simply are. So again, four components: the vital physical body, the emotional body, mental body, universal body. And these energy bodies do not only exist individually, they are part of a bigger multi-dimensional reality. So we can start with the physical body, or the vital physical, and it exists on the physical plane or the physical channel of experience. And you can look around on the physical plane and you can see objects, you can see buildings and structures, you can see landscapes, you can see physical objects, the things that comprise physical reality, including, you know, other people. So we have our individual physical body that exists on this greater physical channel, or this physical plane of experience, this channel of existence. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you. But that's not all there is to us, because we're not just a physical body. There is more to us than that. We also have the capacity to experience emotions, to feel feelings. And that those emotions and feelings exist on their channel of experience, on their dimension of reality, their plane of existence. And it's distinct from the physical. And if we could, see things on the emotional plane, we would be able to see lots of activity. We'd be able to see, things happening on that channel, just like on the physical, only on the emotional. But we don't just have a vital physical body and an emotional body. We don't just move around and emote, even though sometimes it might seem like that, especially if we're in crisis or something. But we have a mental body. We have the capacity to think thoughts. We have the ability to analyze and synthesize information. And our mental body is responsible for that, and the mental body exists on this greater channel of experience, on this plane of existence, or this mental dimension of reality. And then we don't just move around, emote, and think. There's more to us than that. And that, the rest, all the rest, could be attributed to our universal body or spiritual body, which exists on the universal channel, spiritual plane of existence. So this is basically, our constitution, our energy makeup. We humans have these 4 energy bodies that comprise our equipment, so to speak, that we use to experience life in this incarnation. So far so good?
Yes.
So the little 5-pointed star that I just inserted there, that is there to represent how much of us is actually physical. A teeny tiny little portion of us is actually physical. All the rest of us is energy. These are energy bodies. And we could even say, of course, that our physical body is energy, because everything is energy, right? Vibrating at different frequencies. And so the star is there just to help us realize, wow, there's just a tiny little portion of us that's physical. All the rest is energy. So you've probably seen pictures that look like this before, right? This image is out there. Many people have access to it. Many people have seen images similar to this. And again, it's kind of showing the same thing, but just showing it in a different way. So we've got the physical body, which is the dark, the black part, and then the vital body. I don't know if you can discern it very well on the screen there, but the vital body is depicted by that gray area that sort of extends out a couple of inches from the physical. Then the emotional body is the next energy body or energy field, and then the mental and the universal. So even though this picture is used a lot to depict our energy constitution or our energy fields, one thing that I don't like about it is that when you just look at this picture, it kind of makes it look as though the physical body is producing these energy fields, and that is absolutely not the case. The physical body does not produce these energies. In fact, it's actually the other way around. So the energy bodies exist on these planes of experience, and we exist on these planes of experience, and the result of that is these different energy bodies. So that's why I prefer this model as opposed to showing it, with those kind of concentric energy bodies. But just always keep in mind that the energy bodies exist on these greater planes of experience. So the bottom line is we humans occupy multiple planes of existence simultaneously. And it's one of the things that makes us so wonderfully complex. Have you ever noticed that, how complex we are?
Every day.
So we exist on this energy continuum, and it ranges from the lowest or slowest vibratory frequency to the highest or fastest frequency, with several gradations in between. So we know that everything is energy vibrating at different frequencies, and when that energy slows down enough, things show up on the physical level. And then as the energy vibration gets higher and higher, we have these different gradations of our energy bodies, and it is an energy continuum. So I've been talking a lot about energy and using the word energy. I want to offer up a definition, because definitions matter, and how we define things determines a lot. So when I talk about energy, human energy, I'm talking about energy. I mean, human energy does have an energy component to it. Energy meaning force or the ability to do work like other energies. When I tell people that I work in the field of energy medicine, they say, oh, you mean like nuclear power and solar? And I always have to say, no, human energy. And human energy is, in fact, distinct from other forms of energy. But the English language is really limited that way, because in other cultures, many other cultures, there are specific words for human energy, words that capture that human energy is different, than other energy. So if I were to make up, my own word for human energy, it would contain energy, of course, but with human energy, the energy is intimately coupled with information. So energy is not discrete. It is coupled with information, and that information piece becomes really important, especially in the field of energy medicine, and we'll talk about that later. And the other thing about human energy is that not only is it energy and information, but human energy is primarily accessed inside of us. You know when you have energy and when you don't. You know when you're feeling vitalized and when you're not. That's something that you access inside of you. So energy plus information plus internal. I've been trying to float this word energy as perhaps a word that could describe human energy and honor its distinction from other energy forms, but unfortunately language doesn't work that way. You can't just say from now on we will be using the term energy, because language just doesn't work that way. But anyway, in my presentation you might see the word energy from time to time, because I like the word. So if we traverse the planet, looking at systems of health and healing, we find that energy plays a crucial role in many of them. And in fact, if we traverse the planet looking at approaches to health and healing, we see that every single approach to health and healing in existence on the planet that we know of recognizes energy as primary, except for one, and that's conventional Western medicine. Yep. So I have my own little theory about that, and I think maybe what happened is because Western medicine developed largely through the study of cadavers, and a cadaver is basically a dead body, that the energy bodies were missed, because when you're focusing, pretty exclusively on dead bodies, the energy body have already separated from the physical, leaving behind the physical shell. And that became the basis of conventional Western medicine. Whereas in the East, they were studying living people. So big difference. In conventional Western medicine, homeostasis is very important. It's been around for a long time. And if you think about homeostasis, the word homeo means the same. Stasis means static or unchanging. And if you have something that is static and unchanging, you're basically talking about something dead, right? And in the field of energy medicine, Beverly Rubik made a big contribution by advancing the concept of homeodynamics. And homeodynamics tells us that basically a system, a person, a living being will achieve a kind of plateau where there is some sameness in functioning, but then what happens is there's usually a catalyst, something that catalyzes change, and then the system goes into a stage of kind of chaos and reconfigures itself, and then ends up functioning at a higher level. And this is a much more accurate depiction of humans because it's an evolutionary model, and it basically allows us to evolve within our lifetime. And if you look back at your own life, you can probably see that in fact you are evolving. You are getting better and better. You're becoming more conscious, you're becoming more aware, you're growing and learning and all kinds of things. So homeodynamics is a more accurate concept to describe the human experience and to more accurately describe what happens, at least in energy medicine. Oh, a little humor here. You've been fooling around with alternative medicines, haven't you? So the guy goes to see his physician and he's all radiant with his vitality. So I'm going to talk individually about the energy bodies one at a time, and I'm going to have to speed through this just in the interest of time, but we'll start with the vital body and just work our way up. So far so good?
Yes.
It's strange not being able to see you guys, I must say. Very strange. Anyway, so let's look at the vital body. The vital body is basically your power supply. We have a physical body, and the vital body is woven into the physical body and extends beyond it for a couple of inches, and it is responsible for our vitality, for that life force energy, for that get up and go energy, and that allows us to move about and be animated. And all living things have a vital body, including plants and animals. This is not, unique to us humans. So the vital body is our power supply. It's woven into the physical. And, it determines whether or not you feel alive and radiant, or whether you feel like you just want to, fall asleep. Vitality. So the vital body, at least in the field of energy medicine, has different names in the research. I mentioned that William Tiller refers to it as the conjugate physical. Sometimes it's referred to as the etheric body, sometimes just the energy body. A term that's catching on a lot in the research is biofield. It's sometimes also called the vital force, or the living matrix. That's a term that was coined by Jim Oshman. Sometimes it's just referred to as life energy. You can always tell when a field of study is in its emergent state because there's no agreement on vocabulary, and that's where energy medicine is right now with all these different terms. But biofield, as I said, is the one that's catching on in the literature and the research. So if we, are looking from a conventional Western medicine point of view, where does energy come from? Well, if you, are feeling fatigued and you go to the doctor and you say, I just feel tired all the time, they're probably going to ask you about your diet. Maybe, I don't know. Western medicine doesn't recognize nutrition all that much, but they might ask you about your diet. They might ask you what you're eating. They might ask you if you're getting enough exercise, and they might ask you if you're getting good sleep. Because the conventional wisdom is that energy comes from food, exercise, sleep. But if we take these things to their logical conclusion, it begins to break down pretty quickly. I mean, if energy comes from food, then the more food I eat, the more energy I should have. So I should just keep eating and eating and eating and gaining energy. But of course, it doesn't work that way, right? If you eat too much, you get obese and you get tired and you lose energy. And if energy comes from exercise, well, then I should be able to just keep exercising more and more and more and gaining energy. But it doesn't work that way either, because of course, eventually you have to rest. And if energy comes from sleep, well, then the more I sleep, the more energy I should have, but it doesn't work that way either. And then, they say, well, it has to be a balance. There has to be a balance between these three things. But we've all had the experience of eating really well, getting exercise, getting enough sleep, and we can still feel droopy, fatigued. And we've probably also all had the experience of not eating well at all and not exercising and not getting any sleep, and we can still feel great. And that's because this is an incomplete explanation for where human energy comes from. So where does energy come from? Well, I think you should be more explicit here in step 2, where it says, then a miracle occurs. So what happened is in the 1950s and early 1960s, Dr. A.V. Hill, a Nobel Prize-winning biophysicist, began to look into human energy. And he was studying the energy necessary to fire a muscle. And as you probably know, it is said that the energy necessary to fire a muscle comes from ATP, adenosine triphosphate, that biochemical, and its interaction with the cell's mitochondria. Does that sound familiar?
Yep.
That's good. So he was looking into that very deeply, and what he discovered was he could not come up with enough energy from the ATP mitochondria interaction to fire a muscle. And he thought that he had made a mistake, so he repeated his experiments, and he kept coming up with the same thing. There was not enough energy produced by the ATP mitochondria interaction to explain the firing of a muscle. And Dr. Hill referred to this as the unaccounted for energy. And it wasn't just a little bit either, it was quite a bit. And so he eventually published a series of papers on this, calling on his colleagues to please help him find, this unaccounted for energy. And in my opinion, A.V. Hill accidentally discovered the vital body, because that's where the missing energy, the unaccounted for energy, comes from. It doesn't come from food, it doesn't come from ATP mitochondria interaction, it doesn't come from exercise or sleep. The energy comes from the vital body. It took a while, but in 1994, the National Institutes of Health recognized the existence of what I call the vital body. Their term is the biofield, and published in the NIH report was research on the biofield, and it's recognized as a medical subject heading in Medline. So a little bit of progress made at that time. The bottom line is energy comes from energy. It doesn't so much come from, food, exercise, sleep. Energy comes from energy. And energy can neither be created nor destroyed. So we are, in fact, energy beings. So a brief anatomy lesson, the anatomy of the vital body. The vital body consists of the chakra system, the meridians, and the nadis. And you guys probably all already know all this, but the chakras being the major energy centers, Then there's meridians that feed into those chakras. The meridians are the energy distribution system, and the nadis are the tiny, teeny little energy capillaries that are also part of that energy distribution system. It is said that in the typical human body, there's about 72,000 nadis. So that comprises the vital body, and thanks to Alex Gray for his amazing depictions of the vital body and as it interfaces with our physical body. So the vital body and physical body have to be understood together as two sides of the same coin. Whenever you're dealing with living people, you have to acknowledge the vital physical body, two sides of the same coin, because again, if the vital body has separated from the physical, then you have a dead corpse. But in living people, the vital and physical bodies are woven together through the chakra, meridian, nadi system. So they're two sides of the same coin. Now, the vital body has some unique qualities to it that make it distinct from the other energy bodies, distinct from your emotional, mental, and universal bodies. And one of those unique qualities is the replica effect. Another one is the interface effect and the blueprint effect. I don't have time to talk about all of this, but I want to talk about the interface effect because we need to understand that in order to understand the mind-body connection, or how it is that you can use your mind to heal your body. Because you see, if our mind is nothing but a brain and nothing but brain chemistry, then how does that end up affecting us physically? That is not answerable until and unless we understand the interface effect. So what's an interface? Well, if you were a seamstress, you might put an interface on to the collar of a men's dress shirt, because the interface would help the collar to stand up. So an interface is basically a piece of fabric that goes in between two out-facing pieces of fabric. And the interface is designed to give substance. So, in this case, it would help the collar to have more substance so it could stand up. And the vital body plays that role for us. It vitalizes our physical body, it gives substance to our physical body, and it helps our physical body to stand up. But the vital body does not only interface with the physical body, it also interfaces with the emotional body, mental body, and universal body. So it has this amazing effect to be the go-between between our physical body and the rest of our energy bodies, to be like the mediator between our dense physical body and our other energy bodies. And that's a very important function that it plays, and it helps explain a lot of mysterious phenomena that cannot be explained from the conventional perspective. So I put this picture back in there to show how it interfaces, the vital body interfaces not only with the physical, but also with the other energy bodies as well. So what does this mean? The vital body interfaces with the other energy bodies, and it ends up programming the physical body. It programs the physical body not only with energy, but with information. And it basically tells the physical body what to do. So it's as if the physical body is kind of like a printer in a computer system, and the vital body would be like the computer that tells the printer what to print, right? Because when you print out something on a printer, the information that ends up, or the pictures or whatever that ends up coming out on the printer, it didn't start at the printer. It started somewhere else. And what ends up happening in your physical body does not originate on the physical level. It originates on the energy level. And your vital body is responsible for programming your physical body with that energy and information. So how does it do that? Well, one of the ways that your physical body gets programmed by your vital body is through what I call your internal senses. They play a major role in mind over matter, and they play a major role in energy healing. So what are these internal senses? Well, we know that we have the 5 senses: seeing, hearing, tasting, touching, smelling. These 5 senses are external senses. They help us to navigate the external world. They help us to orient ourselves on the external world. But in addition to these external senses, we also have internal senses. And the external senses orient us to the external world. Our internal senses orient us to the internal world. And it turns out that your vital body is extremely responsive to your internal senses. Your internal senses are things like attention, what you focus your attention on. That's something that happens inside of you. Also, your intention, which is basically attention infused with will, right? When you intend something to happen, that happens inside of you. Visualization refers to the pictures that you form inside your head. Self-talk refers to how you talk to yourself inside. And self-sensing refers to your ability to sense what's going on inside your body. So these are your internal senses. And it turns out your vital body is extremely responsive to those internal senses. And because of the interface effect, your vital body ends up telling your physical body what to do. So, are you with me so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm talking about this. What I'd like to do next is like a little experiment, if you're willing to participate in a little experiment.
Sure.
And if you want to participate, then I would ask you to put down your writing materials so that your hands are free. And I would like you to have your 2 hands in front of you. And with your 2 hands in front of you, with your palms facing up toward you, if you look at the base of your palm, you will probably see that there are some creases there. And I want you to use those creases, those lines, as markers. So if you can see me on the monitor, you're going to have your 2 hands like this. You're going to use those lines as markers, and you're going to line them up. And then fold your hands together like this, like in a prayer position, okay? So again, look at the base of your palm. You'll see some creases. Line the creases up as markers, match them, line them up, and then fold your hands together into prayer position. And when you have your hands in prayer position at this point, all I want you to do is to observe your hands. I want you to notice, are your hands the same size? Are your fingers the same size? Your thumbs the same size? Your palm? Some people's hands are the same size, some aren't, just like our feet, right? So you want to just notice if your hands are the same size by lining up the creases on your palms as markers. And then when you have noticed that, you can just allow one of your hands to drop away. It doesn't matter which hand. Just allow one of your hands to drop away, and keep the other hand, as long as it's your hand, not your neighbor's hand. So you have one of your hands in front of you. And then if you would please close your eyes, because we're going to use our internal senses. Okay, so I want you to close your eyes and keep your eyes closed until I ask you to open them. With your eyes closed, I want you to focus your whole attention on this chosen hand. Focus your whole attention on your chosen hand, and I want you to send that hand a clear message. The message to send your hand is, tell your hand, this hand, that it has actually grown to be a very big, large hand. The hand has grown to be enormous. It's huge. So you're telling your hand this message, that it has gotten to be this very massive, big, huge, large hand. And then what I'd like you to do is to actually visualize in your mind's eye that your hand is so big, so humongous. Your fingers are extending out into space. Your palm is thick and wide. Your thumb, big, long. Your hand is huge. And in fact, your hand has become so big, so huge, so enormous that you can hardly hold it up because it's so heavy. So feel the weight of this enormous hand that you're trying to hold up, and you just can hardly even stand it because it's so heavy. So I'm going to be silent for a moment or two so that you can continue to send these messages to the hand and visualize it and feel it without having to listen to my voice. Just take a few moments to do that, focusing on your hand. All right. That should be about enough time. Then when you're ready, you can open your eyes, and using those creases as markers, you want to put your hands side by side, line up the creases as markers, fold your hands together, and notice if there's any difference. And you guys are going to have to tell me what you notice. I can't hear you. I need you to speak louder, please.
I noticed more of like a pulsing, and I felt like there was more inflammation in my chosen hand than the other one.
I'm asking if you notice a difference in the size of your hand.
Which makes it feel bigger, at least.
Okay, yep. So it feels bigger. Okay, that's good. Anybody else?
My right hand was already bigger than my left hand.
Okay.
Not knowing what the experiment was.
All right. And do you notice any difference in the size? Is it any bigger than it already bigger was, or is it the same?
It might be slightly bigger. It seems
all right.
Pretty the same.
All right. Anybody else? I don't know who's in the room right now.
It's 4 people.
Okay. So I don't know if you guys, can you see on the monitor my hand?
Yes.
What do you notice?
The top hand is longer.
Yeah. When I started the experiment, they were the same size.
Huh.
And I would say that my middle finger and index finger are about 1/4 of an inch longer. Ring finger and pinky are about 1/8 of an inch longer. The thumbs are about the same. Physically longer. So, and the hand is probably going to shrink over time, and maybe I'll show you the comparison at the end again. So this is interesting because this is the first time that I'm doing this experiment remotely, and it's the first time that I'm doing it with such a small group. Typically, when I have facilitated this experiment, at least 85% of the audience will have their hand physically grow a minimum of 1/8 of an inch, and sometimes up to 1 inch. And it's not an optical illusion. If we used a ruler or a tape measure, you would actually be able to measure the difference before and after. And it works, it happens because of the interface effect of the vital body with the physical body and the sensitivity of the vital body to your internal senses. So it's a little bit disappointing that no one in the group had their hand grow, but when it does, it's actually a really, really powerful experience of how these energies work and how we can work with them. So sometimes when it doesn't work, it's because of our focus. So in the experiment, we're basically using our internal senses. We're using our attention. We're focusing our attention on the hand. We're using intention because we're intending that the hand grow larger. We're also using our visualization to visualize the hand growing larger. We talk to the hand through our self-talk channel, and we sense and feel that the hand is growing bigger. And just using those internal senses, people are able to actually physically grow their hands. And this is a basis of how energy medicine works, because in energy medicine, we know that these things make a difference, whether you are fully attending to someone or not, whether you're fully present, whether you're focused, on your client or you're not, what's going on inside your head as you're doing energy work, it matters. The pictures that you're visualizing, how you're talking to yourself, what you're sensing, all of that, those are very important senses that we bring to energy medicine, and they matter. They make a huge difference, as I'm sure you know, from doing Reiki or whatever else. So you can use these in your practice, you can use these in your life, to really make a difference. So I've been talking so much about the vital body because it's very important. I'm just going to breeze through the emotional body very, very quickly. I mean, basically, your emotional body is responsible for your feelings. The whole array of emotions. That is the domain of the emotional body. And then we have the mental body, which is responsible for our ability to make thought forms. And thoughts are distinct from feelings. You can either be feeling your feelings or you can be thinking about your feelings. And those are two very different experiences. And that's because the emotional body and the mental body occupy those distinct but overlapping frequency domains. So one question I have for you is, how far do thoughts travel? This is not a right or wrong answer thing. I'm just how far do thoughts travel? Do they travel at all? Nobody wants to answer.
They travel. I think it depends.
Yeah. So what would be the range from what to what?
I think it's who the thoughts are who they're talking to. So if the thoughts from the mental body are speaking universally, they can go anywhere.
Okay.
Or if the thoughts are towards the physical body or are trying to put an idea of what an emotion is, it goes back into what the emotion and physical body is.
Cool. And what if I'm thinking about a person, somebody else? Can my thoughts travel to that person?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and again, this is a question that I've asked, audiences of all, different varieties, and everybody across the board pretty much agrees that thoughts travel. But if you think of conventional, Western medicine, well, our thoughts are nothing but brain chemicals. They can't travel, it's just a bunch of brain chemistry. So, well, then how come everybody has this experience of their thoughts traveling?
Mm-hmm.
Because it doesn't work that way. And what about feelings? Do feelings travel?
Yeah, because you can feel somebody's feelings sometimes from like a mile away.
Totally. And in fact, that's actually extremely well researched. There's this aspect of emotions called the emotional contagion, and it tells us that if you're in a room with somebody who's experiencing a strong emotion, within 2 minutes, you will begin to experience the same emotion. And it doesn't matter if the person is a complete stranger. It doesn't matter if you can't even see the person. So the emotional contagion effect is extremely well documented. But again, if anybody would ever stop to ask, how does this work? According to conventional Western medicine, it cannot work. I mean, how do my brain chemicals jump over, across time and space into somebody else's brain chemicals? Obviously, there's something else going on here, right? It's because we are not just physical, and emotions are not just brain chemicals, not at all. So there is the phenomena of mind over matter, and it has been extremely well researched and shown that our mind can be used to greatly reduce pain. The mind can be used to reverse aging, to heal arthritis, to improve academic test scores, to prevent pharmaceutical drugs from working, and to change the actual functioning and physical structure of your brain. So it's not so much about the brain determining anything. It's really about how we use our brain that is the most important thing. And mind over matter is not just a saying. It's actually a well-documented phenomena. And there's a whole separate body of research on the power of human intent. There are literally hundreds of research studies that confirm the effects of human intent on living things like other humans, animals, insects, plants, bacteria, yeast, cancer cells, DNA, inanimate objects such as chocolate. That's my favorite piece of research done by Dean Radin, the principal researcher at the Institute of Noetic Sciences. He took chocolate and had it infused with intention, specific intention, and then other chocolate, the same chocolate that was not infused with the intention, and fed the chocolate to people, and only the ones who had the intention-infused chocolate experienced the effects. Human intent also affects electronic devices, including computers, and it doesn't matter how close or far away things are. A few feet, thousands of miles does not limit the effects of intention. You've probably seen images from the work of Masaru Emoto with his messages from water. The image on the left is basically positive intention or positive thoughts, and the image on the right is what happens when negative thoughts or negative intention is infused into the water. I just want to talk briefly about some research that was done, again, Dean Radin and colleagues. And the research was set up with a group of healers in Sao Paulo, Brazil. And they were instructed to direct healing intention to a group of volunteers that were in a lab in Las Vegas, Nevada. And the volunteers were hooked up to all different kinds of measuring devices, measuring their heart rate, their skin conductance, their brain, function, all kinds of things. And at the specific time interval when the healing intention was sent to the volunteers, the gauges started fluctuating, lights flashing. It was absolutely measurable. And then when the signal was given to stop sending the healing intention, all the instruments then, went back to baseline. And, that was repeated several times on the exact intervals. So it was very clear evidence of this healing intention traveling, through space-time to affect these volunteers at those specific timed intervals. The other interesting thing about this research is that it was actually conducted to take place in the future, and it worked. Dr. Tiller has come up with what he calls intention imprinted devices, or host devices, and these are electronic devices that are about the size of a standard remote control, and they contain very basic electronics. And the devices are infused with specific intentions. And in these types of experiments, the intention is typically infused by people who are and have been long-time meditators. And one of the reasons meditators are used for this type of research is because people who have been meditating for a long time have the capacity to control their thoughts, to control their mind. So they have the capacity to shut their thoughts off. They have the capacity to turn off their emotions. They have the capacity to focus their mind on a specific thing and to hold a focus. They have the power of concentration. And that enables this kind of research to be done. So when these devices are used in research, they're infused with a specific intention. The devices are then shipped to other locations, sometimes thousands of miles away from where the original intention was infused. And once again, the intention actually manifests. These have been used to change, for example, the pH of water. And if any of you have ever tried to manage a swimming pool, you probably know that changing the pH of water is not easily done without chemical interventions. But they've been able to do it just by infusing these devices with that specific intention. There's reason to believe that these types of devices are going to be a big part of the future of energy medicine, infusing devices such as this with healing intentions and using them in hospitals and homes and so forth. And again, they have been shown to work. So that's a little bit about the mental body. I'm just going to talk very briefly about the universal body or spiritual body. The universal body is the seat of consciousness. And consciousness itself is a very high vibration energy frequency. And, we can talk about consciousness as being part of the mind, depending on how we define mind. Consciousness is the glue, so to speak, that holds our energy bodies together and brings continuity to us, to our lives, to our experiences. Without consciousness, there would be no continuity. It's hard to even imagine life without consciousness. Consciousness itself is a continuum, and it ranges from selective consciousness on the individual level, which refers to what you pay attention to moment, what you pay attention to, what you select to focus your awareness on. That's selective consciousness. And then there is individuated consciousness, which is all of those moments strung together across a lifetime. Your personal lifetime awareness is your individuated consciousness. But then we also have the collective consciousness, which is all of those individual awarenesses all together. And there is such a thing as intuitive consciousness, which refers to your ability to tap into that collective, because that collective consciousness holds all of the energy information. And then there is, the mother lode, unity consciousness, which is the palpable experiencing of the oneness of all. So another way of saying this is that your personal attention span is an offshoot of unity consciousness. It really matters what you pay attention to. So we have to pay attention to what we pay attention to. Many know the drop merges into the ocean, right? We've heard that many times, that we as individuated units of consciousness, we merge into that larger ocean of consciousness, but few know that the ocean also merges into the drop. We are powerful, extraordinary, beyond our wildest dreams. Consciousness basically is an energy information field, and there's a lot of research to back this up. Some of it is research from the Institute of Heart Math, where they have studied the electromagnetic field of the heart, which extends out from the heart, quite a range. And they also, they've done a lot of research, but the one study I'd like to share with you right now was set up with volunteers sitting in front of computer monitors, and the computer monitors were programmed to randomly flash images that either had emotionally charged content or were more neutral, emotionally neutral. And nobody knew what images were going to be flashing on the computer, because the computer was deciding that. It was random. And the volunteers were hooked up to all kinds of measuring devices, because HeartMath wanted to study the effects of these emotionally charged images on the brain and the heart. What happened, and what they were kind of surprised by, they didn't expect to happen, was that not only was the heart more affected by the images, but the heart actually registered the emotionally charged images before the images appeared on the computer screen. So the heart was able to somehow know, to tap in to some kind of energy information field, and to know what was coming before it was known, before it was displayed, and before anybody else knew. There's been similar research done on what's been called the pupillary response, because we know that our pupils expand, they dilate and contract depending on whether we're seeing emotionally charged, images or not. And in this research, it was set up in a very similar way, and the same thing happened. The pupils responded to the emotionally charged images before the images were even displayed, before the person even knew what was on the screen. So again, it's evidence that there's some kind of energy information field that we are tapping into. This image, which is kind of bizarre, is referring to the research that's been done on people with multiple personality disorder. And it's been shown that when a person is manifesting one personality, one of their personalities, for example, can require medication, whereas another one of their personalities needs no medication whatsoever. In a different person, one personality can be diabetic. Another one of their personalities has no diabetes whatsoever. Similar results have been shown with allergies. A person can have no allergies whatsoever, but when they shift into a different one of their personalities, then the allergies kick up. differences in brain waves, differences in eye functioning. One personality can have 20/20 vision. Another personality in the same person can need to have, glasses, can't see. So, this research is so interesting because it's the same person, meaning, the biology, the physiology is the same. The only thing that's changing is one personality to another. What's changing is their state of consciousness. And it manifests a completely different set of physical symptoms, so to speak. So another way of saying this, as Deepak Chopra is fond of saying, different consciousnesses have different metabolisms. Different consciousnesses have different metabolisms. So mind over matter, right? And then we can even take it to a larger context and talk perhaps about the global mind very briefly. I just want to share some research done by Roger Nelson at Princeton University, the Global Consciousness Project. And this is an international research project, very multidisciplinary, scientists and engineers from different disciplines. And what it is, it consists of computers positioned throughout the planet, and the computers are programmed to produce random numbers. It's very similar to flipping a coin. If you flip a coin 50 times, you're going to end up with roughly 25 heads, 25 tails. There's a 50-50 chance that it's going to be heads or tails, right? Well, the computers are programmed to kind of virtually flip a coin. They're programmed to randomly produce either an O or a 1, I think it is. And over time, it ends up being, that perfect 50-50 percentage. But there comes a time when the computers start to misbehave. And these are very sophisticated computers. They're cranking out 200 randomized bit trials every second. And this data has been collected for more than 10 years. And what they found is that at certain times, the computers misbehave. And the times of the misbehaving computers have been correlated with events going on in the world. The first time this was noticed was during the O.J. Simpson trial, when the trial verdict was going to be announced. The computers began to misbehave. Another time that it was noticed was with the death of Princess Diana. Other instances have been things like earthquakes or the tsunami that happened in Thailand, things like that. And one of the most interesting pieces of research that has come out of this was with the 9/11 attacks that happened on the World Trade Center. And what happened is that the computers misbehaved when that event happened, but they actually started misbehaving 4 hours prior to the actual attack. Kind of interesting. So it's telling us, it seems to be indicating that the computers are being influenced by some kind of global energy information, causing them to stop, working properly. And there have been over 400 events so far in this 10+ years of research, 400 events that show these anomalies, this non-randomness. And the odds of that happening by chance are more than 1 trillion to 1. So nobody can say, oh, it's just a coincidence, it's a fluke. The odds are more than 1 trillion to 1. If you want to learn more about it, you can go to global-mind.org and look at some of the results there. It's very, very, very interesting. And I want to end by talking about the research of Dr. John Hagelin and his unified field theory. And basically, it's a theory of this kind of global mind, or this global consciousness phenomena. And Dr. Hagelin has put together some research using what he calls technologies of consciousness. And again, it involves meditators. And when people are focusing their meditation on specific areas of the world, they are able to reduce war, to reduce terrorism, to reduce social conflict. As Dr. Hagelin says, they've been able to turn off violence in the Middle East like a light switch. They've been able to reduce crime in 47 cities, and that includes a 25% drop in violent crime in Washington, D.C. And if you want to learn more about that research, I've given the website there. So the implications of this are that consciousness itself is an energy information field, and that energy information is fundamental, that we are energy information systems, and that energy information can change extremely rapidly, which means we can change extremely rapidly, which means we can heal extremely rapidly. And I want to end with a quote from Eckhart Tolle: "You are the light of the world. You are the consciousness that illuminates the world. Know yourself as that." So thank you for your energy and attention. If I want to take questions, I also want to mention that I teach an online program called Energy Mastery Self-Actualization through Applied Energetics. And if you're interested in that, you can check out energymasterynow.com. So please, questions.
Does anyone have any questions?
I thought it was really interesting. Definitely some things that were familiar and some things that weren't. And I like all the research that you pulled into it.
I agree.
Thanks. Appreciate it.
I don't actually have any questions, but I really enjoyed it.
Well, all right. I'm glad. Yeah, I'm kind of a research nerd.
No, you like it.
I'm glad that somebody is, because I don't have the patience and attention to read a lot of research stuff, but I like it when people give me a synopsis and they tell me which stuff's good to read.
Yeah. Yeah, well, it is interesting, and there's so much happening now, and we're so blessed to be living in this time, I think, because it's really emerging, you know, this kind of focus, and we can all be part of it, you know, contribute to our part, and use it to help people, you know, because the old approach just doesn't cut it anymore.
Yeah. Actually, that was going to be one of my questions, was how do you see like us as practitioners being able to share that with other people, like be able to talk to our patients or something about the energetic body and the physical body and how they're connected, and how and how you can like explain why the awareness of yourself and your self-talk is so important to your physical body, and the I can't think of the word, but how the body is getting physical disease from it.
Right. Yes.
That makes sense.
Yes. And I mean, I think we have to shift away from this role of, you know, I am the doctor and you are the patient and I'm going to fix you. Because it's really about educating people and empowering them to learn about themselves, you know, so that they don't go to a doctor and want to be fixed, you know, that they actually want to take a more active role and take responsibility for their own health and healing, because they can. I mean, cleaning up, you know, how you talk to yourself, and you know, disciplining your mind, you know, doing meditation, learning how to be able to, you know, turn off those negative thoughts and those critical thoughts and things like that. is such a huge contribution to our overall health and well-being and quality of life. And it's not anything that you can do for someone. The person has to do it themselves. And so I think our role is more of educators and teaching people about their energy bodies, their energy makeup, and then giving them some homework. And yeah, just giving them assignments. I mean, it sounds, I don't know if people would respond. I call it home play. Giving them fun homework assignments where they can actually experiment with things like that, because it really makes a difference.
Would you be able to give a few examples of that? Some like exercises or something that you find that helps to be able to connect all these things together?
Exercises that help to connect all these things together.
Yes, such as like, so you were mentioning like self-talk. So
right.
What kind of exercises would you do to be able to like have them work on their self-talk? Or
yes, well, you would just, first we have to help people understand that it does impact, their health. How you talk to yourself matters. It does impact your health. And I mean, you can do something as basic as, do you guys know kinesiology muscle testing? Do you do it, or?
We have it actually as a class here.
That's great. So, a very simple demonstration of the power of thoughts or self-talk is you can have the person think a positive thought and, muscle test them, and then ask them to think a negative thought and muscle test them. And of course, their arm is going to go weak. I mean, it's going to switch off because of the negative thought. Or you can do a similar thing and ask them to say something nice to themselves and to say something, critical, and do the same thing. Test it each time. And, the muscle testing will demonstrate the power of that self-talk. And then the person can actually feel it. They can feel the response of their system in their body. I mean, that's a very powerful thing to do, and it takes no time at all. It's a very, very quick thing. And then once they understand the connection, then they can have a home play assignment where, okay, I want you to start a journal, keep track of your thoughts, or keep track of how you talk to yourself, and write it down, make little notes at the end of the night, and then you can bring in the power of intention. When somebody comes back to you with their journal, it's probably going to be a lot of negative, because people do that. They just if somebody hasn't done their inner work and paid attention, they're probably saying negative things to themselves quite a bit. And so then you can pick one of those and turn it into an affirmation, and then have the person incorporate that using intention. Every day they're going to introduce that affirmation, into their mind, into their mental body. That could be another kind of home play assignment that they could do, and it's very simple but very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm. A lot of our patients also come in for fatigue, and same with students here are always fatigued and tired. How would you, on an energetic level, be able to kind of strengthen like that human body or that vitality, or even use like maybe the universal body to kind of come and help with that fatigue?
Well, the universal body can be used to help with fatigue, in that a person can recalibrate their system to think, inspirational thoughts, or, depending on the person's spiritual beliefs, if they're attuned to something called their higher self, they can ask for higher self guidance. If somebody is Christian, you can have them do a prayer. I mean, things like that. But I didn't talk about the energy thieves, which is covered in the book. But one of the big things that negatively impacts the vital body is electromagnetic radiation from cell phones. and computer Wi-Fi. And this is a known biohazard toxin, and people really need to learn how to use their technology devices in safer ways, because the telecom industry is not looking out for us. I mean, this is going to be the next tobacco smoking issue. You know, the tobacco companies knew for years, they knew that what they were doing was harmful, and they suppressed the research. They demonized any scientists that tried to say otherwise. They purposefully confused the issue, and it was only when they were absolutely forced that they started to make changes. The same thing is going to happen to the telecom companies, because it's well documented that electromagnetic radiation in the microwave frequency, which these cell phones emit, is harmful. It's particularly harmful to the vital body. And if the vital body is being compromised, physical, debilitation is bound to supervene, because again, the physical body is being programmed by the vital body. So you can educate people on how to use their cell phones in a safer way. I refer to it as safe cell. It's a takeoff on safe sex, but I'll do anything to get people's attention and try to get them to learn about this. But I mean, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not in favor of ban all technology. I mean, I use technology all the time, and we're on it right now. But there are definitely things that you can do to make it more safe. And so, learning what those things are and teaching your clients how to interact more safely, with these devices is huge. And children should not be using, cell phones or iPads or any kind of wireless technology at all. Period. I mean, it's really a crime what's happening right now, especially in terms of companies, strategically making devices for infants. It's just like, it's very scary what is going to be happening, because electromagnetic radiation has been linked to all kinds of nasty health effects. Yeah. And fatigue is one of them, So, and then that's just the tiny, little tip of the iceberg. I mean, yeah. So teaching people, I mean, really being good educators is, I think, huge. Helping people understand themselves better and making lifestyle changes. That's what is going to turn the tide here, because there aren't enough naturopaths on the planet, to treat all the people that are going to need help.
Yeah.
Sadly.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So sorry to be a downer there.
But, that's what we're here for, really.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm kind of.
No, it's a war.
Yeah, it is actually. But it's worth fighting. People's lives are at stake. They really are. And, yeah, we have to play a role in that. So I can teach you a perk me up energy exercise if you want, because you might notice that you're feeling a little droopy right now. So close your eyes and sense into your energy level. And on a scale of 1 to 10, you want to put a number on it. So 10 means you're fully vitalized and radiant, and 1 means you're feeling really, 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 really fatigued. So just put a number on your current energy level. And when you have that number, you can open your eyes. That will signal me that you've got that. Okay, so this is a perk up energy exercise. So the first thing I want you to do is to take your palm, not your fingers, but your palm, on your navel. Okay, we have a mini chakra in the palm of our hand, so that palm mini chakra needs to go on the navel. And then it doesn't matter which hand, because we're going to switch hands. With the other hand, you're going to go to the collar points, which are K27s. Do you know those points? Kidney 27?
Mhm.
Okay. So you want to rub. So you keep your palms stationary on your navel and you're rubbing these collar points. And if you don't know where they are, it's kind of on the inside of the collarbone as it curves down into the suprasternal notch. And by inside, I mean not in the throat area, but under the collarbone. There's like a little notch in there. So you're going to rub and breathe and rub and breathe. Breathing helps everything. And then we're going to switch hands and do the same thing on the other side, just rubbing and breathing. Rubbing those K27s, collar points, breathing, rubbing, breathing. And this has 3 steps to it. So that's step 1. Step 2 is one finger goes above lip and one goes below. And you're going to rub and keep the palm on the navel. And what we're doing here is we're stimulating the endpoints of central and governing meridian. Central is sometimes called conception vessel.
Ren also.
Say it again.
Ren in Chinese medicine?
Yes. So we're stimulating those endpoints, rubbing and breathing. Brushing our etheric teeth. Switch hands. Same thing on the other side. Keep the palm on the navel. And then step 3 is palm stays on the navel and the hand is going to go back to the, this is a technical term, top of your bun crack. The apex of the gluteal cleft. So you just want to be rubbing and breathing. We're stimulating the beginning point of governing meridian, which is kind of close to the coccyx there. And then you can switch hands and do the same thing on the other side. Rubbing and breathing. And then when you're done, just close your eyes and check in with your energy. And notice if your energy level has changed. And notice any difference?
A lot.
Yeah, I do.
Bring!
I definitely feel like more present, like my whole body is like right here versus like all
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
all-
Yeah.
Less achiness too. I was like really sore from exercising. And I mean, I was tired too. I feel more energized, but I feel like less pain.
Good. Yeah. That's great. So, you know, collar, lips, and tail, hand on the navel. It takes, what did that take? Like 2 minutes or something? And you can really, you know, perk yourself up without stimulants, you know, no caffeine involved. So that's a nice little energizer exercise that you can do. Also make sure that you drink enough water, because water or absence thereof can contribute, you know, to fatigue. So make sure that you're hydrated enough. And it should be water, not anything else. You know, actually the vital body is the one that needs the water, because the water becomes a medium through which the energy information travels. Water is a very unique substance. There's nothing else like it on the planet. And water has the capacity to take on the energetic information of what it comes in contact with. And so, you know, we need to stay hydrated in order to keep the energy information flowing. It's not so much a physical thing. It's more an energy information thing. And then, I mean, I could go on and on. You should avoid fluorescent lights, which you guys probably have in that room right there. I can't really tell, but are they fluorescents?
probably.
Yeah. They're nasty. And they're very hard on the vital body, that type of lighting. And even the compact fluorescents, the curly Q bulbs,
Yeah, that's the worst.
those are not good at all. They're very hard on the vital body, and therefore not healthy. And the healthiest light bulb is the old, incandescent, the old household light bulb. Those are the healthiest in terms of artificial lighting, but the vital body wants sunlight. That's the best thing you could do for it, is to give it some sunlight on your skin. Because the sun has all kinds of nutrients that the vital body needs in order to thrive. So, yeah, so those are some tips. Eat living food, don't eat dead food, because, plants have a vital body. And if you eat things that are, fresh, it's going to give you a lot more vitality than if you eat the processed, chemicalized, preservative-filled, microwaved, dead.
What about frozen food? Like just flash frozen vegetables. Do you find that they're still vital or not kill it?
That's a really good question. They're not in general as vitalized, of course, but it also depends on how long they've been frozen. So if you go to the farmer's market and buy a bunch of fresh veggies and then freeze them and eat them, relatively soon, they're going to have more vitality than if you go to the store and buy the frozen vegetables that are in the thing there, because those have been frozen for who knows how long,
Yeah.
Yeah. So, freezing is preferable to canning.
Yeah.
And, but still the best is fresh.
Mm-hmm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
That was awesome. Sorry there weren't more students here, but
Yeah.
It's kind of just a weird time.
I'm sure. I remember what it was like when I was in school, and it's like you have so much work to do, and then to do something in the evening is just like, no.
Yeah.
So, but I really admire you for, hosting things like this, because it can be so helpful. And yeah, thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
Yeah,
It's been a pleasure. And any other last minute questions?
I guess will you give Sarah the recording so she could share it with people?
Sure. Yeah, I will do that. I'll figure it out. I don't think I can send it, by email, but I'll create a link or something where you can link to it. Sorry, I forgot to turn this off. It keeps dinging.
Yeah, that would be good. That would be helpful, because I know that I had a 20-person list that I had going, but
I'm sure people are interested, it's just a timing thing.
Yeah, and it's hard to find a time, because there's only a 12 to 1 break in the day for all of us, but all of those were taken this week and next week for some reason.
Yeah.
So, oh well.
Yeah, well, I'm glad that, that it's being recorded, and at least I think it is. Oh yeah, there it is, being recorded. Great. So yeah, so I'll take care of that, and I'll send you the link or whatever it is, and you can distribute it. And yeah, thank you so much. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah, it's truly a pleasure. Thank you so much.